Um, I said I'd come back to some of the discussions around coaching. I strongly believe that Kata is a model for coaching and can help with organisational change. So, as an example, this picture is of a local hospital to mine, where they're training each other to coach in a sort of safe environment. We call it the dojo. Um, Step back from that for a second and think about culture. A lot of people talk about culture change and the desire to move to a new culture, be that where leaders coach or whatever. Um, we can't just kind of state that into existence. It's not something that is just going to change because we have some kind of initiative or communication program about culture and all the rest of it. We can't kind of blow people towards that new culture without actually getting people to change the way that they think and act. So we need some people in the organisation who are going to be early adopters to a new way of thinking about that. And that helps when we're talking about deploying a kata as a way of getting leaders to coach. We think about how can we start with a few people who are prepared to give this a go and grow it that way. So that management pattern, for example, coaching as a skill, is something that grows over time. It isn't just something that we can sheep dip people through. So again, one of the call outs for me in terms of a deployment of kata is we don't want a 500 people wide sheep dip program of people getting an introduction to kata. It's much more important to start small and kind of grow it in a more fractal way over time. So again, it's potentially a reason why people don't adopt it because it does take time, but it is much more effective to do it that way.
Mm.
Um, I'm challenging some of the received wisdom, if you like, around kata with this one. In some of the literature that Mike published, he talks about the manager or the leader being the coach, and at Toyota that normally is the case, that it's kind of manager and their team member. Um, I'm not so sure about that. In fact, I would go as far as to say that I disagree with that in terms of who the coach should be. Our evidence, in terms of the people that we train, is that um, people in their peer group, their work colleagues and their associates can actually coach each other, sometimes more effectively than a leader. And that's not to say that a leader shouldn't coach, but our view would be it doesn't have to be a leader that does the coaching. And I'm indebted to Frank for the conversation that we had a week or so ago about that. And Frank alludes to something very similar. I've called it the illusion of coaching, and then again, that maybe that plays into Owen's question around lots of coaching in organisations is quite unscientific, not kind of specific in terms of data, somewhat unstructured. So the learner or the coachee doesn't really know where the conversation is going. There often aren't kind of clear outcomes to the discussion. Leaders, when you observe these things, think they are coaching, but they're often telling or instructing or guiding almost subliminally with their own biases to actually move people into a certain direction. Or coaching is applied as a sort of a punishment for underachievers to sort of to close gaps. And again, one of the things I struggle with a little bit is if you've seen the situational leadership model where people talk about directing, coaching, supporting, and then delegating, it would appear that actually at some point here you don't get coached anymore. That you've got it and you're okay, and it's been delegated to you, so you're all right. And I would argue that everybody benefits from having a